Imagine a structure so vast it stitches across mountains and deserts, a winding dragon of brick and earth visible from far above. Most people know the Great Wall of China is long. They know it's ancient. They've probably seen pictures of tourists walking on its restored sections. But what if I told you that nearly everything we think we know is just the surface? What if its true story is stranger, more complex, and far more mysterious than any postcard could convey? Did you know, for instance, that a significant portion of what we call the Great Wall wasn't even built by the famous first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, but centuries before him? Or that parts of it were cemented together using sticky rice? And what about the hidden passages, the intricate communication systems, or the sheer brutal human cost that went into its making? A cost so immense it's woven into the very fabric of Chinese folklore. This isn't just about a wall. It's about a sprawling, fragmented monument to human ambition, fear, and ingenuity, built and rebuilt by countless hands across more than 2 millennia. It's a place where history whispers through crumbling watchtowers and across windswept battlements. We often see it as a single continuous line, but that's a modern illusion. It's a patchwork quilt of different dynasties, different materials and different purposes, some sections grand and imposing, others barely more than an earthen mound reclaimed by time. What kind of secrets could a structure like this hold? Secrets buried under centuries of dust, legend, and oversight. What truths about ancient engineering, communication, and warfare are still waiting to be fully understood, even by today's most dedicated archaeologists and historians? The answers might surprise you. They might even change how you see one of the world's most iconic landmarks. And who knows what other revelations are still hidden, just out of sight, along its incredible winding path. Number 20. How will the Great Wall survive the next 1,000 years? The Great Wall is old, really old. It has stood for thousands of years, but its survival into the future is far from guaranteed. People often think of it as this indestructible thing, a permanent fixture on the landscape, but it's actually quite fragile in many places. The truth is, significant portions of the wall are not the grand, restored sections you see in tourist brochures. Far from it. Much of it is just crumbling earth, loose stones, or forgotten ruins, slowly being swallowed by nature and increasingly by human activity. Take, for example, the impact of erosion. Wind and water have been ceaselessly working on the wall for centuries. The sections in the Gansu province, where the wall is often made of rammed earth rather than stone, are particularly vulnerable. The dry, arid climate means strong winds whip across the plains, slowly but surely eroding the earthen ramparts. Rainfall, though less frequent, can be torrential, washing away entire sections, especially when ancient drainage systems have failed or become clogged. Professor Zhang Yong, an archaeologist who has dedicated years to studying the wall, has pointed out that some parts lose several meters in height every few decades due to these natural processes. It's a slow decay, but a relentless one. The Ming Dynasty wall, which is the most famous part, is often seen as more robust because of its brick and stone construction. But even these materials degrade over time. Mortar weakens, bricks crack, and the sheer force of weather eventually takes its toll. Then there's the human element, which is a big paradox. We cherish the wall, but we also unwittingly damage it. Tourism, while vital for funding preservation, brings its own set of problems. Foot traffic wears down steps and pathways. People sometimes carve their names into the bricks, defacing ancient structures. And it's not just the big busy sections. Even in remote areas, local communities, sometimes out of necessity or ignorance, have contributed to its degradation. For years, people living near the wall would sometimes take bricks to build their own homes or pigsties. This wasn't malicious intent. It was often just using readily available materials. A 2014 report by the Great Wall Society of China estimated that about a third of the Ming Dynasty wall has disappeared entirely, and only 8.2% is in good condition. That's a shocking number when you think about it. It means a vast majority is either partially ruined or completely gone. Urban development and infrastructure projects also pose a threat. As China modernizes and expands, new roads, railways, and buildings sometimes encroach upon the wall's path or disrupt its surrounding historical landscape. While there are strict laws now, historical oversight in earlier decades led to irreversible damage in some areas. For instance, in the 1950s and 60s, during periods of rapid development, some sections were actually dismantled to make way for roads or to provide building materials for local projects, a stark reminder of how recent its vulnerabilities are. Conservation efforts are massive and ongoing, but they face immense challenges. The wall is so incredibly long and spans such diverse terrain from deserts to mountains to plains that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. Different sections require different strategies, from stabilizing earthen walls to carefully restoring stone structures. Organizations like the China Cultural Heritage Foundation and various international groups are working with local governments, employing everything from traditional building techniques to modern remote sensing technology to monitor and protect the wall. But the sheer scale of the task is staggering. It's like trying to maintain a giant ancient serpent that stretches for thousands of miles, always battling against time, nature, and human impact. The future of this incredible monument isn't just about preserving stones and bricks. It's about preserving a profound piece of human history and ingenuity against a relentless tide of entropy and change. What unrecorded natural disasters could still destroy vulnerable sections of the wall? Will future technologies allow us to perfectly preserve every crumbling brick, or are some parts destined to return to the earth forever? How will shifting human populations and evolving economic pressures impact the wall's survival in ways we can't even imagine today? Number 19, were there secret tunnels beneath the wall? When you walk along the Great Wall, you usually think about what's above ground, the battlements, the watchtowers, the sheer scale of it all. But what if there was more to it than met the eye, literally? What if beneath those sturdy foundations, hidden networks of tunnels and passages existed? It sounds like something out of an adventure movie, but there's historical and anecdotal evidence suggesting that subterranean structures were indeed a part of the wall's complex defensive and logistical systems. Ancient fortifications often incorporated underground elements. This wasn't unique to China. Castles and fortresses across the world had cellars, sally ports, and escape tunnels. The Great Wall, being the ultimate fortification, was no different in its ambition. Historians and archaeologists have long speculated about these hidden features. One of the primary reasons for such tunnels would have been for troop movement. Imagine needing to reposition soldiers quickly and secretly during a siege. An underground passage could provide a vital, undetected route to flank an enemy or reinforce a beleaguered section of the wall. It also offered protection from enemy fire and surveillance. Evidence for these tunnels is often circumstantial but compelling. During the Ming Dynasty, when much of the recognizable brick and stone wall was built or significantly reinforced, military engineering was at a high level. Military manuals from that period, though sometimes vague on specific architectural details, often discuss strategies that imply hidden movements. For example, the famous Ming Dynasty military treatise Wu Beiji, Treatise on Armament Technology, compiled by Mao Yuani in the 17th century, describes various defensive techniques, including concealed positions and unexpected deployments, which would have been greatly aided by subterranean passages. While it doesn't explicitly detail Great Wall tunnels, it illustrates the mindset of military engineers at the time. More concrete evidence has emerged from archaeological surveys. In some sections, particularly around important garrisons and passes like Jiayuguan in Gansu Province or Shanhai Pass, archaeologists have found remnants of structures that suggest underground uses. These aren't always long, continuous tunnels, but rather reinforced cellars, chambers, or passages leading away from the main wall structure into the surrounding terrain. For instance, in 2017, reports from the state-run China Daily detailed discoveries of a suspected underground warehouse and hidden passages near sections of the wall in Hebei province. These discoveries were often made not through intentional excavation for tunnels, but as part of broader surveys, indicating that such features were integrated into the wall's fabric, rather than being separate, later additions. These specific finds were typically around critical strategic points, where the need for covert storage of supplies or secret troop movements would have been highest. It's also important to remember that many sections of the Great Wall, especially those made of rammed earth in more remote or older areas, have collapsed over time. If tunnels existed in these sections, they would have caved in long ago, leaving little trace. The earth-built portions, unlike stone, do not preserve cavities well. This makes identifying subterranean networks incredibly challenging, as many might simply appear as natural subsidence or erosion. The folklore surrounding the wall also often mentions hidden ways and secret chambers, tales passed down through generations. While folklore isn't historical proof, it often has roots in reality, hinting at functions and features that were once known but have since been lost to time or decay. The possibility of entire networks of unseen passages beneath the dragon's spine remains a tantalizing mystery, suggesting an even more intricate and sophisticated defensive system than we currently understand. Are there still intact underground complexes waiting to be discovered beneath the most iconic sections of the Great Wall? Could some natural collapses in remote areas actually be the remnants of collapsed tunnels, not just surface erosion? What strategic advantages do these hidden passages provide in historical battles that we haven't fully accounted for? Number 18, was the Great Wall a mythical dragon come to life? The Great Wall isn't just a physical barrier, it's deeply ingrained in Chinese culture and symbolism. For centuries, it has been seen as a living entity, a protector, and often, quite literally, a dragon. This connection isn't just a poetic metaphor, it's a profound cultural belief that shaped how people viewed the wall and infused it with mystical significance. The image of the Great Wall as a dragon isn't random. Look at its winding, undulating path across mountain ranges. It truly resembles a colossal serpent, a dragon stretching its body across the land, its head often envisioned at Shanghai Pass, where it meets the sea, and its tail disappearing into the western deserts. In Chinese mythology, the dragon is a potent symbol of power, good fortune, imperial authority, and protection. It controls water, weather, and represents the emperor himself. So, when people saw this immense structure snaking across their land, it was natural to associate it with the most powerful and auspicious creature in their mythology. This perception wasn't just for farmers or common folk, it was deeply rooted in the imperial imagination. Emperors often used dragon symbolism to legitimize their rule, and connecting the Great Wall to a dragon further emphasized its importance as a defender of the empire, a physical manifestation of imperial power protecting the Han people. There are specific legends that reinforce this connection. One famous story, often told about the building of the wall, involves a magical dragon that showed the ancient builders the ideal path for the wall, guiding them over mountains and through valleys. Another legend, though more somber, speaks of the wall being built over the bones of countless laborers, and that the spirit of these people, combined with the dragon's power, protected China. This symbolism wasn't static, it evolved over centuries, but the core idea of the wall as a guardian dragon persisted, even influencing geomancy, the ancient Chinese practice of land divination. And geomancers or feng shui masters would have considered the Great Wall's placement in relation to mountains, rivers, and celestial alignments. Its undulating form, mirroring the natural contours of the land, would have been seen as harnessing the Yi, or cosmic energy of the earth, akin to a dragon's breath. It wasn't just about defense against invaders, it was about defending the spiritual integrity of the land, creating a harmonious and protected space for the empire. This perspective is explored in various cultural studies and historical analyses, such as those by Professor Arthur Waldron in his book The Great Wall of China from History to Myth, which delves into how the wall's image and symbolic meaning have shifted and solidified over time, often detaching from its purely military function to become a national symbol. Even in modern times, the dragon symbolism endures. When you visit the wall, particularly the more dramatic sections like battling or jinxiling, tour guides and local storytellers will often refer to it as the Earth Dragon or the Stone Dragon. It's a way to connect the physical marvel with the profound cultural identity of China. The Great Wall is not just a collection of bricks and mortar, it's a living part of the Chinese psyche, breathing with the power and mystery of the dragon. Its winding form isn't just an architectural choice, it's an echo of an ancient, powerful, mythical beast guarding the land and its people from threats both seen and unseen. Did ancient Chinese engineers consciously design the wall's path to mimic a dragon's form, or was the resemblance merely a happy coincidence that reinforced existing cultural beliefs? Were there specific rituals performed during its construction to imbue sections of the wall with dragon energy? How much of the wall's enduring power as a symbol comes from its physical presence, and how much from the millennia-old myths woven into its fabric? Number 17, what weapons were truly used on the Great Wall? When you think about the Great Wall in warfare, you probably picture archers on the battlements, firing arrows at charging nomadic cavalry. And you'd be right, bows and arrows were absolutely crucial, but the defensive systems of the Great Wall were far more sophisticated and varied than just that. It was a place where, ancient military technology was pushed to its limits, employing a diverse arsenal of weapons and ingenious traps designed to repel formidable invaders. The primary invaders for centuries were the nomadic tribes from the north, like the Xiongnu, Mongols, and Jurchens. They were often swift horsemen, highly mobile, and formidable in open combat. The wall's defenders needed ways to counter their speed and numerical superiority. Besides bows and arrows, which came in many forms, but from powerful composite bows for long-range engagement to crossbows for greater piercing power, the wall's garrisons were equipped with a range of projectile weapons. Trebuchets and catapults, though perhaps not as continuously stationed as in European castles, were certainly used. These siege engines could hurl large stones or even incendiary projectiles, like fireballs made of pitch and straw, down onto enemy formations. Historical accounts, such as those detailed in the history of the Ming-Shi, describe the use of such stone-throwing machines during major conflicts on the northern frontier. But it wasn't just about things thrown from a distance. Close quarter combat on the wall and at its gates was brutal. Soldiers used spears, halberds, swords, and various polearms. The wall's design often included murder holes or drop holes in gatehouses, through which defenders could pour boiling water, hot oil, or drop stones onto attackers trying to batter down the gates. Imagine trying to scale a ladder only to have a cauldron of scalding liquid rain down on you. It was a terrifying prospect. And then there was gunpowder. China invented gunpowder, and its application in warfare predates its widespread use in Europe by centuries. On the Great Wall, gunpowder wasn't initially used in cannons as we know them today, but in various early forms of fire lances, a kind of flamethrower, rocket arrows, and primitive bombs. The Wulongjing Fire Dragon Manual, a Ming Dynasty military treatise compiled by Zhao Yu and Liu Ji, details numerous gunpowder weapons, many of which would have been deployed from the wall. These included early hand cannons, Paola, multiple rocket launchers, and landmines planted outside the wall to deter cavalry charges. These technologies were cutting edge for their time, providing psychological shock and destructive power that could turn the tide of a battle. The wall itself was also a weapon. Its sheer height and formidable battlements forced invaders into choke points, allowing defenders to concentrate their fire. The beacon towers weren't just for communication, they were strongholds, often equipped with their own arsenals, acting as observation posts and mini fortresses along the line. The design of the gates, with multiple layers of defense, barbicans, and courtyards, trapped attackers in killing zones. It was a comprehensive defensive system where the architecture, the weapons, and the human element worked together to create a formidable, if not always impenetrable, barrier against the northern hordes. The Great Wall was a testament to ancient Chinese military engineering, far beyond simple arrows and swords. How many specific designs of gunpowder weapons were uniquely developed for Great Wall defense and then lost to history? What advanced traps or defensive mechanisms were deployed in sections that have since crumbled, leaving no archaeological trace? Could the psychological impact of seeing these sophisticated weapons on the wall have been a greater deterrent to invaders than their physical destructive power alone? Number 16, what parts of the wall are vanishing? We often picture the Great Wall as an eternal, unmoving structure, but the reality is that huge parts of it are simply disappearing, fading back into the landscape. This isn't just about natural erosion, though that's a big part of it. It's a complex story of neglect, local encroachment, and the sheer challenge of preserving something so incredibly vast and old. The sections that are vanishing fastest are generally not the famous rebuilt tourist spots like Badaling or Muchanyu, but the remote, wild sections often made of less durable materials. Consider the sections in Gansu and Ningxia provinces in the northwestern parts of China. Here, much of the wall was constructed using rammed earth, a technique where layers of soil, gravel, and sometimes straw are compressed together to form a solid mass. This method was effective and economical in regions where stone was scarce, but it's far less resilient than brick and mortar. These earthen sections are incredibly vulnerable to the elements. Wind erosion, particularly in the desert areas, is relentless. Strong winds carry abrasive sand particles that slowly but surely wear down the ancient earthworks. Coupled with occasional torrential rains, which can wash away entire sections, these earthen walls are literally dissolving back into the earth. Academic research, including studies published in journals like Cultural Heritage Science, has documented the alarming rate of decay in these regions, with some sections losing meters of their height and width over just a few decades. And beyond natural processes, human activity has played a significant and often tragic role. For many years, local villagers living near these remote sections saw the wall not as a historical monument but as a convenient source of building materials. Its bricks from stone sections were taken to build houses, animal pens, or even wells. Earth from the rammed earth sections was used as fertilizer or for local construction. This wasn't malicious vandalism in most cases. It was often born out of necessity in poverty-stricken areas where other materials were expensive or unavailable. While official protection measures have increased in recent decades, the damage done over many centuries is irreversible. A report by the Great Wall Society of China, a non-governmental organization, highlighted in 2014 that only 8.2% of the Ming Dynasty wall is considered well-preserved, with about 74% being in poor condition. That means the vast majority of it is slowly but steadily crumbling away. Another issue is agricultural encroachment. As farming expands, fields sometimes directly abut the wall, and over time, cultivation can destabilize the ground around its base, leading to structural failures. The land beneath and around the wall also contains untold archaeological treasures, and unregulated digging or farming can disturb these sites. Furthermore, tourism, while crucial for awareness and funding, sometimes inadvertently causes damage to less regulated sections. Great Wall trekking has become popular, but unprepared visitors can dislodge stones, create new paths, and contribute to erosion in vulnerable areas. The vanishing sections of the Great Wall are a powerful reminder of its fragility. It's a race against time to document, preserve, and protect what remains before it's lost forever. These crumbling sections, often overlooked by tourists, hold immense historical value, telling the story of different construction techniques, different eras, and the sheer effort involved in its millennia-long existence. Their disappearance is not just a loss of physical structure, but a loss of irreplaceable historical information. Are there sections of the Great Wall that have completely vanished, leaving no trace, making its true original length forever unknowable? How much crucial historical data, embedded in these crumbling walls, is being lost before archaeologists can even properly document it? What unknown ecosystems and unique flora and fauna are being impacted by the slow decay and disappearance of the wall's remote sections? Number 15, was the wall a psychological weapon? We often think of the Great Wall as a purely physical barrier, a line of defense meant to stop invaders cold. And it certainly was that. But its true power wasn't just in its height or its armed garrisons. A significant part of its effectiveness was psychological. The sheer scale, the immense human effort, and the constant, visible presence of the wall were designed to be a profound deterrent, a statement of power that could break an enemy's will before a single arrow was even fired. Imagine being a nomadic warrior from the northern steppes, accustomed to open warfare and swift raids. You ride with your kinsmen across vast plains, and then suddenly you encounter this colossal structure. It snakes across the horizon as far as the eye can see, disappearing into towering mountains and distant deserts. It's not just a fence, it's a monumental achievement, a seemingly endless barrier built by an empire of millions. The message is clear: you cannot pass. We are strong, we are unified, we are relentless. This visual impact alone would have been incredibly demoralizing. The prospect of breaching such a structure, not just once, but multiple times, to truly penetrate the empire must have felt overwhelming. Historical accounts, though often written from the Chinese perspective, hint at this psychological effect. While nomadic groups sometimes found ways around or through the wall, its presence often forced them to change their tactics, to seek out weaker points, or to engage in more protracted sieges, which were not their preferred method of warfare. This shift in strategy forced by the wall already gave the Chinese an advantage. The Ming Dynasty, which built some of the most impressive sections, clearly understood this. They invested enormous resources, not just in the practical defense of the wall, but in its symbolic grandeur. The imposing watchtowers, the sturdy brickwork, and the continuous construction were all meant to project an image of impregnable strength and unwavering determination. Even when the wall was breached, the invaders knew they were deep in enemy territory, with the possibility of being cut off by the very wall they had crossed. The network of beacon towers, which could transmit warnings over vast distances in hours, meant that reinforcements could be called and the breach could be sealed. This rapid communication system added another layer of psychological pressure, telling invaders that their movements were being watched and their incursions would not go unnoticed or unchallenged. And Dr. Stephen Haw, in his work on the Great Wall, discusses how its monumental scale served as both a practical and psychological barrier, a clear demarcation line between the civilized Chinese Empire and the barbarian lands beyond. The wall was also a statement of internal control and national identity for the Chinese. For the people living within the empire, the Great Wall represented security, a clear boundary that defined us from them. It fostered a sense of unity and national purpose, even if the actual effectiveness of different sections varied widely over time. This internal psychological reinforcement was just as important as the external deterrent. It was a visible reminder of imperial power and protection, a source of collective pride and reassurance. So, while soldiers fought with arrows and gunpowder, the wall itself fought with scale, presence, and an unspoken ancient message of defiance. How much did the psychological impact of the wall contribute to periods of peace on the northern frontier, even without direct military engagement? Were there specific architectural features or artistic elements on the wall designed to intimidate or demoralize attackers even further? Could the Great Wall's psychological role have inadvertently shaped the cultural identity and self-perception of the nomadic peoples who faced it for centuries? Number 14. Who lived on the Great Wall besides soldiers? When we think of the Great Wall, our minds usually go straight to soldiers, standing guard, arrows at the ready. But the wall wasn't just a military outpost. It was a complex living system. For centuries, various people lived in and around its garrisons, turning many sections into small, self-sufficient communities. Their lives were intimately tied to the wall, contributing to its maintenance, logistics, and the very fabric of life along China's vast northern frontier. Beyond the frontline soldiers, there were artisans and craftsmen. The Great Wall was in a constant state of construction, repair, and modification. This meant skilled laborers were always needed: masons, brickmakers, carpenters, blacksmiths, and engineers. These individuals, sometimes brought in from distant provinces, lived in settlements near the wall, often within the fortifications themselves, like the large garrison towns, at major passes such as Jiayuguan or Shanhai Pass. They weren't just building, though, they were innovating, adapting techniques to the varied terrain and available materials. The families of these artisans would often live with them, creating small, bustling communities around the watchtowers and fortresses. Then there were the logistical support staff. Feeding and supplying an army stationed along thousands of miles of wall was an immense undertaking. This required cooks, farmers, porters, carters, and administrators. Farmers cultivated land within and near the wall's confines to provide food for the garrisons. They raised livestock and grew crops in fertile pockets, especially around the major passes where the land was more arable. Porters and carters were crucial for transporting supplies, food, water, weapons, and building materials, often over incredibly difficult terrain. Historians studying the social history of the Ming Dynasty frontier, like Timothy Brooke, have detailed the complex logistical networks that supported these border defenses, indicating a much larger civilian presence than typically imagined. Furthermore, some sections of the wall, particularly during periods of relative peace, also served as border checkpoints and trading posts. This meant merchants and traders, along with customs officials, lived and worked there. These checkpoints facilitated regulated trade with the nomadic tribes, exchanging Chinese goods like silk and tea for horses and furs. This created a unique cultural interface where people from different backgrounds and even different ethnicities interacted daily. The communities around these passes would have been vibrant, multicultural hubs, challenging the idea of the wall as a purely isolationist barrier. Women and children were also part of this frontier life. Soldiers and other personnel often served long tours of duty, sometimes their entire careers, along the wall. It was not uncommon for them to marry local women or to bring their families with them to the garrison. While life on the frontier was harsh, these families established homes, raised children, and created a sense of permanence. Evidence from archaeological digs in some garrison areas has revealed artifacts like pottery fragments, cooking implements, and even toys, painting a picture of domestic life that existed alongside military operations. And these communities, far from the imperial capital, developed their own unique customs and identities, forged by the demanding environment and constant vigilance required to live along the Great Wall. How did the specific demands of living directly on or near the wall influence the cultural practices and social structures of these communities? What forgotten stories of women and children, whose lives were dedicated to supporting the wall, are still buried beneath its foundations? Did the mixed populations at trading posts along the wall lead to unique linguistic or artistic innovations that are now lost? Number 13, what does Great Wall really mean? When we say Great Wall of China, we're using a term that's relatively modern, especially in its current singular meaning. For most of its long history, the Chinese didn't call it the Great Wall. The concept and the terminology evolved over centuries, reflecting changing political landscapes, defensive strategies, and national identity. This might seem like a small detail, but it tells us a lot about how the Chinese historically viewed these massive fortifications. The term Changcheng dates back to the Warring States period, well before Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, unified China. Various regional states built their own, long walls to protect their borders from each other and from nomadic tribes. These were separate, distinct defensive lines, not part of a unified Great Wall. When Qin Shi Huang connected and extended some of these walls, it was still seen as a series of long walls, albeit an impressive, unified effort. The idea was to create a continuous defensive barrier, but the term Chengcheng simply described its physical characteristic, its length, not its unique status as the Great Wall. The English term, Great Wall, only really gained traction in the West much later, perhaps around the 18th or 19th century, as European travelers and missionaries explored China. It was an attempt to convey the sheer, awe-inspiring scale of the structure to a foreign audience. In China itself, while Changcheng remained the primary term, the idea of a singular grand national monument really took hold in the 20th century. This was particularly true during periods of nationalism and modernization, when the wall became a powerful symbol of Chinese resilience and unity. Historian Arthur Waldron's influential book, The Great Wall of China from History to Myth, explores this evolution in detail. He argues that the modern singular Great Wall concept is largely a product of the Ming Dynasty's extensive construction and later Western interpretation and Chinese nationalism. For much of its history, these walls were practical, military structures, often built and abandoned in cycles, reflecting the shifting threats and resources of different dynasties. There wasn't always a continuous, overarching vision of the Great Wall. Instead, there were many long walls, built for specific purposes at specific times, often with different designs and materials, and sometimes even running parallel to each other. Even today, when Chinese people use Changcheng, they understand it encompasses this vast, fragmented history. It's a collective noun for a collection of walls, built across different eras by different hands, rather than a single, monolithic construction. The shift from long walls to the Great Wall is more than just a linguistic change. It reflects a fundamental change in how the structure is perceived globally and nationally. It transformed from a functional, localized defense into a powerful, universal symbol of national identity and human endeavor. Understanding this subtle distinction helps us appreciate the true complex history of this incredible monument beyond the simplified narrative often presented in popular culture. It's a testament to many walls, many efforts, and many generations. How did the earliest Western descriptions of the Great Wall influence the later Chinese nationalistic adoption of a singular, unified narrative? Were there other ancient Chinese terms for sections of the wall that conveyed specific regional or dynastic meanings now lost to history? Does the modern singular term Great Wall obscure or simplify the incredibly diverse historical functions and identities of its various components? Number 12. Why was the wall never truly finished? We often imagine the Great Wall as this one, complete thing, a finished masterpiece stretching across the landscape. But the truth is, the Great Wall was never truly finished in the way we might think of a building. It was in a constant state of construction, repair, neglect, and strategic reevaluation for over 2 millennia. This continuous evolution is one of its most fascinating, yet often overlooked, secrets. Think about the sheer scale. Building a single continuous wall stretching thousands of miles across diverse terrain is an almost unimaginable feat. Even with immense labor, it wasn't a project that could be started and simply completed. Different dynasties inherited existing sections, tore them down, rebuilt them, or added completely new segments. The Qin dynasty, under Qin Shi Huang, connected earlier Warring States walls, but his efforts were largely made of rammed earth and wood, and much of it decayed after his dynasty fell. Its later dynasties, like the Han, also built extensively, but often in different locations or using different techniques. It was less about finishing the wall and more about continually adapting defenses to current threats. The Ming Dynasty, which is responsible for most of the iconic brick and stone sections we see today, embarked on the most extensive and systematic building program. But even their efforts, spanning over 200 years, were a series of ongoing projects. It wasn't a single master plan executed flawlessly. Different sections were built at different times, often in response to specific military threats from the Mongols or other northern nomadic groups. Generals on the frontier would petition the emperor for funds and labor to strengthen their particular sections. Some parts were heavily fortified, while others were left as simpler earthworks or relied on natural barriers. Professor Michael Dillon, in his historical accounts of China, emphasizes that the Great Wall was always a dynamic rather than static defense system. The financial constraints and political will also played a massive role. Building and maintaining the wall was incredibly expensive, requiring vast amounts of labor, materials, and logistical support. Dynasties faced internal rebellions, economic downturns, and other military campaigns, all competing for resources. Sometimes emperors would prioritize other projects or strategies, leading to periods of neglect for the wall. The sections would fall into disrepair, watchtowers would crumble, and garrisons would be reduced. Then, when a new threat emerged, a renewed burst of construction and repair would begin. This cyclical nature meant that the wall was never done in a permanent sense. It was always an ongoing, adaptable project. Furthermore, the very concept of finishing a linear defense over such an immense distance is problematic. Threats shifted, borders changed, and military technology evolved. What was an effective defense in one century might be obsolete in the next. The wall was a living military system, not a static monument. It was constantly being modified, extended, or allowed to decay depending on the immediate strategic needs of the empire. So rather than seeing it as unfinished, it's perhaps more accurate to see it as perpetually under construction, a testament to continuous effort rather than a singular completion. If the Great Wall was never truly finished, what different forms would a completed version have taken if a single dynasty had the resources to see it through? What specific sections were planned but never built due to shifts in imperial policy or unforeseen events? How would the ongoing, unfinished nature of the wall have influenced the long-term morale and commitment of the soldiers and laborers stationed along its vast expanse? Number 11. How did they haul materials up steep mountains? Imagine building a wall across jagged, impossibly steep mountain ridges. You see the massive bricks, the heavy stones, the earth and mortar. How on earth did they get all of that up there, sometimes to peaks reaching over 1,000 meters, around 3,300 feet above sea level, long before modern machinery existed? This is one of the Great Wall's most astounding secrets. The incredible ingenuity and sheer brute force used to transport materials in the most challenging terrain. It's tempting to think of simple human chains, but the scale of the task demanded more than that. For relatively accessible sections, people carried materials on their backs or in baskets, often forming long lines of laborers ascending the slopes. But this was incredibly inefficient for the massive quantities needed. For heavier stones and larger bricks, animals were crucial. Donkeys, mules, and sometimes even goats with specially designed pack saddles were used. These animals, hardy and sure-footed, could navigate narrow, winding mountain paths, carrying heavy loads up to the construction sites. There are historical accounts and even some visual representations from later periods depicting animals laden with materials, slowly making their way up the slopes. However, animals alone weren't enough for the steepest and most challenging sections, like those found around Jinshaling, Jiangku, or Battling, where the wall literally climbs vertical cliffs. Here, ancient engineers developed a system of levers, pulleys, and simple winches. Wooden scaffolding was erected, allowing workers to hoist heavy stones up section by section. Sometimes these winches were powered by large teams of men or animals. It was slow, laborious work requiring immense coordination and strength. Historian Zhang Baotian, known for his work on ancient Chinese engineering, highlights the sophisticated understanding of mechanics that allowed these seemingly impossible feats to occur. Another ingenious method involved sleds. During winter, when snow and ice covered the mountains, workers would sometimes slide large blocks of stone down prepared ice paths, leveraging the slipperiness to move materials that would be impossible to carry. Conversely, they might have used sleds pulled by teams of men or animals up gentle slopes, essentially creating a primitive form of rail transport for heavy items. As evidence of these types of approaches comes from archaeological findings around construction sites, where wear patterns on rocks and remnants of wooden structures suggest their use. The material itself also dictated the method. While the most visible parts of the Ming Wall are brick and stone, many sections, especially older ones and those in resource-scarce areas, were built with rammed earth. This significantly reduced the transportation problem, as the primary material soil was often available locally. Workers would dig earth from nearby hillsides and compress it layer by layer directly on site. Even for brick and stone sections, the bricks were often fired in kilns located close to the construction sites, minimizing the distance they had to be carried. This strategic placement of kilns and quarries was a critical part of the logistical planning, reducing the burden of transporting finished materials over long distances. The construction of the Great Wall was a testament to ancient problem-solving, combining human endurance with clever, if simple, mechanical principles to conquer some of the world's most formidable terrain. Were specific types of animals bred or trained for the extreme conditions of wall construction? And did their methods influence later Chinese engineering projects? How many construction-related accidents involving the transport of heavy materials are still buried in the historical record or in the soil around the wall? Could the knowledge of these ancient material transport techniques offer insights into solving modern logistical challenges in remote, difficult environments? Number 10 is the Great Wall really invisible from space. This is one of those facts everyone knows about the Great Wall, but it's actually a persistent myth, the idea that it's the only man-made structure visible from the moon or even from low Earth orbit with the naked eye. Let's be clear, it's not. And understanding why this myth took hold and why it's so hard to shake tells us a lot about our fascination with the wall's immense scale. The myth likely started with Richard Halliburton, an American adventurer, who claimed in his 1938 book, Second Book of Marvels, that the Great Wall was visible from the moon. This was, of course, long before anyone had actually been to the moon. The idea then became part of popular culture and was repeated endlessly. Even a popular textbook, Ripley's Believe It or Not, perpetuated this claim. It sounds impressive, and it reinforces the idea of the wall's unparalleled grandeur. However, astronauts and cosmonauts from Gemini missions to the International Space Station have consistently debunked this. Take, for instance, American astronaut Gene Cernan, who flew on Gemini 9 and Apollo 10, and was the last man to walk on the moon with Apollo 17. He explicitly stated that from Earth orbit, at an altitude of a few hundred miles, the Great Wall is extremely difficult to see. It's too narrow, its colors blend with the landscape, and it lacks strong contrasting features. And Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei, China's first man in space, also confirmed upon his return in 2003 that he could not see the Great Wall from orbit. This generated a bit of embarrassment and further effort to clarify the matter. The problem is one of visual contrast and resolution. While the wall is long, it's also relatively narrow, typically only 5 to 9 meters wide. And its construction materials, whether rammed earth, brick, or stone, tend to blend in with the natural colors of the surrounding soil, rock, and vegetation. From orbit, cities with their bright lights and distinctive grid patterns are far more visible, as are large agricultural fields or major transportation networks like highways. The urban sprawl of Shanghai or the distinct lines of major international airports are much easier to spot than the Great Wall. NASA and various space agencies have put out official statements clarifying this. From low Earth orbit, with ideal conditions, clear weather, specific lighting, prior knowledge of where to look, experienced astronauts might spot very small, specific sections, particularly those that contrast well with their surroundings, like a whitewashed section against dark Earth, or a section that casts a distinct shadow. But this is far from clearly visible or the only man-made structure visible. And from the moon, which is about 240,000 miles away, it's absolutely impossible. The visual angle and distance make it no more visible than a single strand of hair seen from 100 yards away. Despite the scientific evidence, the myth persists, probably because it's such a compelling narrative. It speaks to the awe-inspiring scale of human achievement that the wall represents. But the reality is that the wall's greatness isn't diminished by its invisibility from space. It's enhanced by the knowledge that its immense presence is a testament to human effort on Earth, not a beacon to the cosmos. Its true impact is felt in its history, its culture, and its physical presence on the ground, not by its faintness from orbit. What other grand ancient structures, if any, could theoretically be seen from low Earth orbit under optimal conditions besides the Great Wall? Why did this specific myth about the Great Wall resonate so strongly and persist for so long, even in the face of direct debunking? How much has the invisible from space myth, despite being false, contributed to the wall's global fame and symbolic power? Number 9. How did the wall become a cultural landmark instead of just a fortification? The Great Wall started purely as a military defense. Its purpose was to keep out invaders, to mark a border, and to provide strategic advantage in warfare. But somewhere along its long history, it transcended that original, practical role. It transformed from a series of fortifications into something far more profound, a powerful cultural landmark, a symbol of China itself. This shift wasn't sudden, it was a gradual process shaped by centuries of use, neglect, rediscovery, and political repurposing. For much of its existence, particularly before the Ming Dynasty, the various long walls were functional. People living nearby experienced them as part of their daily lives, a barrier, a place of trade, a source of labor, or simply a feature of the landscape. They weren't necessarily seen as a singular national emblem in the way they are today. But as dynasties rose and fell, and as the wall's strategic importance waxed and waned, its meaning began to deepen. The Ming Dynasty, with its extensive and durable construction, solidified the wall's physical presence and, by extension, its symbolic power. It became a visible, tangible representation of the Ming Empire's strength and its determination to protect its heartland. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, as China faced internal turmoil and external pressures, the Great Wall's symbolic role became even more pronounced. It was during this period that Westerners began to discover and romanticize the wall, often portraying it as a timeless wonder, a monument to a mysterious and ancient civilization. This external admiration, combined with a growing sense of Chinese nationalism, spurred a reevaluation of the wall internally. It was no longer just a defensive line. It became a symbol of national pride, resilience, and the enduring spirit of the Chinese people. One of the most significant moments in this transformation came in the 20th century. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the Communist Party recognized the immense symbolic potential of the Great Wall. It was reframed as a monument to the laboring masses, a testament to collective human effort, and a powerful symbol of national unity and defiance against foreign threats. This wasn't just about tourism, it was about integrating the wall into the national narrative, using its history to inspire patriotism and collective purpose. Today, the wall serves many roles beyond defense. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized globally for its outstanding universal value. It's a major tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors each year who come not just to see ancient bricks, but to connect with a powerful piece of history and culture. It's also a focal point for archaeological research, offering insights into ancient engineering, military strategy, and daily life along the frontier. Professor Luo Zwen, a renowned Great Wall expert, dedicated his life to preserving and promoting the wall, recognizing its dual role as both a historical artifact and a living cultural symbol. The wall's journey from a utilitarian barrier to a beloved national and global icon is a testament to its enduring power and the human capacity to imbue physical structures with profound meaning. Did the shifting geopolitical context of various dynasties influence how actively the wall was promoted as a cultural symbol versus a practical defense? Are there specific historical figures, forgotten by time, who were instrumental in shaping the early symbolic meaning of the wall before it became a national icon? How does the global perception of the wall as a cultural landmark differ from its internal Chinese perception, and what might these differences reveal about both cultures? Number 8 were some sections of the wall built from pure earth. When most people think of the Great Wall, they picture the majestic stone and brick battlements that wind through the mountains near Beijing. But that iconic image represents only a fraction of its total length and an even smaller fraction of its diverse construction history. A significant and often overlooked secret is that vast portions of the Great Wall, particularly older sections and those in western and northern regions, were built primarily, sometimes exclusively, from earth. These aren't just small mounds, they are formidable, centuries-old earthen ramparts that are often far less dramatic to look at, but just as historically significant. It involves compacting layers of soil, often mixed with gravel, sand, and sometimes even plant matter like straw or reeds, within temporary wooden frames. Once a layer was compacted, the frames would be moved up and the process repeated, gradually building a solid, incredibly dense wall. This technique was ancient and widespread in China, used for everything from city walls to imperial palaces long before the Great Wall. It was durable, effective, and crucially, it utilized readily available local materials. The earliest walls, like those built during the Warring States period, around 475 to 221 BC by states like Qizhou and Yan, were predominantly rammed earth. When Qin Shi Huang ordered the connection of these walls and the construction of new sections, his massive project also relied heavily on rammed earth, especially in the western and northern stretches where timber and stone were scarce. These sections, often located in the Gansu, Ningxia, and Inner Mongolia regions, were perfectly suited for this technique. The dry arid climate helped preserve the earthen structures for centuries, often maintaining impressive heights and widths despite the constant erosion of wind and occasional flash floods. A key advantage of rammed earth was its logistical simplicity. You didn't need to quarry and transport heavy stones or fire millions of bricks. Laborers could source the soil directly from nearby areas, dig it, mix it, and compact it on site. This made construction faster and less resource-intensive in regions far from forests or quarries. Historian and archaeologist William Lindsay, who has extensively explored and documented the wild sections of the wall, often highlights the prevalence and historical importance of these earthen walls, challenging the popular misconception that the entire wall is made of stone. His work emphasizes that understanding these diverse construction methods is vital to appreciating the wall's full history. Today, many of these earthen sections are in various states of decay. Without the protective facing of brick or stone, they are more vulnerable to natural erosion. Wind and rain slowly wear them down, and in some places they appear as little more than long, undulating mounds on the landscape. But underneath that weathered surface, the compressed earth still holds its form, a testament to ancient engineering and the resourcefulness of the builders. These pure earthen walls are a silent, humbling reminder that the Great Wall is not a monolithic structure, but a mosaic of diverse materials and techniques, each chosen to suit the specific environment and strategic needs of its time. Could specific local soil compositions along the wall have unique properties that contributed to the incredible longevity of some rammed earth sections? How did the use of different plant materials within rammed earth walls vary by region, and what secrets might they hold about local ecosystems? Are there ancient techniques for compacting earth that are still unknown to modern civil engineers, waiting to be rediscovered within these weathered walls? Number 7. How did they keep so many soldiers fed and supplied? Imagine thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of soldiers stationed along a massive, often remote defensive line that stretches for thousands of miles. Keeping these garrisons fed, watered, and supplied with weapons, clothing, and other necessities was a logistical nightmare on an epic scale. It's one of the most hidden secrets of the Great Wall, the immense and sophisticated supply chain that allowed it to function for centuries. This wasn't just about moving goods, it was about managing an entire economy of support. During the Ming Dynasty, when the wall was at its most developed, the logistics were incredibly complex. Grain was the most crucial commodity. It was transported from fertile agricultural regions in the south and central plains of China, often by boat, along canals and rivers, then transferred to land routes. From there, it was carried by carts, pack animals, donkeys, mules, and human porters over rugged terrain to the various garrisons and watchtowers. This was a slow, arduous process. The journey could take months, and the losses due to spoilage, theft, and natural disasters were significant. Merchants who transported grain to the frontier garrisons were rewarded with salt licenses, which allowed them to sell salt, a highly profitable state monopoly. This incentivized private merchants to undertake the dangerous and difficult task of supplying the troops, reducing the direct burden on the imperial treasury and its own logistical capabilities. This system was crucial for sustaining the wall's garrisons for centuries, as discussed by historians like Morris Wasabi in his works on China's frontier relations. Beyond food, there were weapons to forge and transport, clothing to weave, medical supplies, and even fuel for signal fires. Where garrisons often had their own workshops for basic repairs and crafting. In some areas, soldiers and their families were encouraged or even required to farm land near the wall to supplement their rations. These colonies were often established in strategically important areas, providing both food and a local pool of labor for maintenance. Water supply was another massive challenge, especially in arid regions. Clever engineering was often employed, including systems to collect rainwater, and in some areas, deep wells were dug. Some sections of the wall even had channels or reservoirs built into their structure to store water for the garrisons. The beacon towers, which often housed small contingents of soldiers, needed to be self-sufficient for short periods, storing enough food and water for immediate needs. The entire system was overseen by a vast bureaucracy of officials who managed procurement, transportation, and distribution. Though corruption was a perennial problem, and records show constant struggles to ensure that supplies reached their intended destinations. Despite these challenges, the ability of successive Chinese dynasties to maintain such a massive distributed military presence for so long is a testament to their administrative and logistical prowess. It wasn't perfect, but it kept the wall functioning as a defensive barrier, revealing a hidden layer of intricate planning and vast human effort behind every brick and every watchtower. What specific historical accounts detail the greatest logistical failures or triumphs in supplying the wall? How did the diet and living conditions of soldiers along the wall vary by region and over different historical periods? Were there ancient innovations in food preservation or transportation methods that were developed specifically for the wall and then lost to history? Number 6, did Qin Shi Huang really build the Great Wall? This is one of the biggest misconceptions about the Great Wall, and it's almost universally believed that the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, built the Great Wall. The truth is much more nuanced and fascinating. While he certainly played a critical role in its history, he didn't build the Great Wall as we largely imagine it today. Instead, he consolidated and connected earlier walls, laying the groundwork for what would become an enduring symbol. Before Qin Shi Huang unified China in 221 BC, the land was divided into several warring states. Many of these states, like Qi, Zhao, Yan, Wei, and Chu, had already built extensive defensive walls along their borders to protect themselves from each other and from nomadic tribes to the north. These were, in effect, the great walls of their time-long formidable barriers made of rammed earth, stone, or timber, depending on local resources. These pre-Qin walls are a crucial, often overlooked, part of the wall's history. Archaeologists have discovered remnants of these early walls, sometimes running parallel to later Ming Dynasty sections, demonstrating their ancient origins. What Qin Shi Huang did was an astounding feat of engineering and political will. After unifying China, he ordered the destruction of internal walls that divided the former states. Then, he commanded his general Meng Tian to link up existing northern defensive walls built by the states of Qin, Zhao, and Yan, and to extend them further into the newly conquered territories. This grand project was designed to protect his unified empire from the constant threat of the Xiongnu nomads. Sima Qian's records of the grand historian Shiji, written about a century after Qin Shi Huang, is the primary historical source for this. It describes the enormous human cost and the vast scale of Meng Tian's construction. However, Qin's wall was largely made of rammed earth, as well as wood and local stone. It was a massive undertaking, but it was not the brick-and-mortar wall we commonly associate with the Great Wall today. Much of Qin's original work has long since eroded or been buried under sand and vegetation. What we typically see in photos, the well-preserved grandstone sections, are overwhelmingly from the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644 AD, built more than 1,500 years after Qin Shi Huang. So while Qin Shi Huang gave the long wall concept its first truly imperial, unified vision and scale, he wasn't the sole builder, nor did he construct the most famous parts. He was a crucial link in a chain of builders that spanned millennia. His role was more of a grand unifier and extender of existing defenses, establishing the precedent for a continuous northern frontier defense. It's a testament to his ambition that his efforts are still attributed to him, even if the bricks and stones people touch today were laid by later hands under different emperors many centuries later. Understanding this distinction enriches our appreciation of the wall's true age and complex, multi-layered history. Were there specific sections of pre-Qin walls that were considered superior to Qin Shi Huang's later additions, and were these techniques incorporated? How much of Qin Shi Huang's wall has been completely lost without a trace, and what historical knowledge vanished with it? What political or military motivations, beyond simply defense, might have driven Qin Shi Huang's decision to unify and extend the existing walls? Number 5. What was the wall's role in ancient astronomy? It sounds strange to connect a military fortification like the Great Wall with the stars, but ancient Chinese civilization had a profound relationship with astronomy. The sky was not just for wonder, it was a cosmic calendar, a guide for agriculture, and a reflection of imperial authority. While the Great Wall's primary purpose was defense, some scholars and archaeologists have speculated about its potential, albeit secondary, role in ancient astronomy and celestial observation. This isn't about giant observatories on every watchtower, but subtle alignments and practical uses that tie the earthly structure to the heavens. Ancient China's astronomical prowess was well documented. They accurately recorded comets, supernovae, and eclipses centuries before many other civilizations. For them, the emperor's mandate to rule was directly linked to the celestial order. So, it wouldn't be surprising if their most significant earthly structures also had some relationship to the cosmos. One theory suggests that certain watchtowers or specific sections of the wall might have been strategically aligned to mark significant astronomical events, such as solstices or equinoxes. Similar to how some ancient European megalithic structures like Stonehenge align with the sun, it's plausible that the Chinese, with their deep astronomical knowledge, might have integrated such alignments into their largest and most enduring construction. For example, a particular watchtower might have been positioned so that on the winter solstice, the rising sun would cast a shadow in a specific direction or illuminate a particular opening. These alignments could have served as a giant fixed calendar, aiding in agricultural planning for the garrisons or marking important dates for rituals. While definitive archaeological proof is hard to come by, the precision of ancient Chinese engineering makes this possibility intriguing. Moreover, the elevated position of many watchtowers, particularly in mountainous regions, would have made them ideal observation points for the night sky. Soldiers on long watches, far from urban light pollution, would have had unparalleled views of the stars. While their primary duty was vigilance against human invaders, it's not a stretch to imagine them also observing celestial phenomena. The beacon fires, used for signaling, could have also been used in rudimentary ways to track planetary movements or mark specific constellations, especially if these observations were tied to seasonal changes or navigation. The records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian, while not detailing specific astronomical uses for the wall, extensively covers ancient Chinese astronomy and the imperial court's reliance on celestial observations. The wall's sheer length and east-west orientation across vast stretches could also have been used as a giant geographical baseline for astronomical measurements. By observing celestial bodies from different points along the wall, ancient astronomers could have potentially refined their understanding of the Earth's curvature or mapped out their empire more accurately. This would have been an incredibly advanced application, but given the Chinese capability in cartography and scientific observation, it remains a fascinating speculative area for research. The idea that this formidable military barrier also quietly served as a grand terrestrial observatory connects the practical needs of defense with the profound intellectual pursuits of ancient Chinese civilization, revealing another layer of hidden ingenuity. Are there specific currently unstudied watchtowers along the wall whose architecture or orientation might reveal deliberate astronomical alignments? Could ancient texts or star charts contain subtle references to observations made from wall garrisons? How did the astronomical knowledge of the soldiers and officials stationed along the wall compare to the imperial astronomers in the capital, and what unique insights might they have gained from their remote vantage points? Number 4. What ancient mortar made the wall so strong? You might think that ancient builders just stacked rocks or packed dirt together, but the Great Wall, especially the robust sections of the Ming Dynasty, used a surprisingly sophisticated mortar that contributed significantly to its incredible durability. And the secret ingredient? Sticky rice. Yes, the same sticky rice you might eat for dinner played a vital role in holding together one of the world's most enduring structures. This isn't just folklore, it's a fact supported by scientific research. For centuries, people knew the Ming Wall's mortar was exceptionally strong, often stronger than the bricks it bound. But it wasn't until modern scientific analysis that the specific properties were fully understood. In 2010, a team of Chinese scientists led by Professor Zhang Bingjian from Zhejiang University published a groundbreaking study in the Journal Accounts of Chemical Research. They analyzed samples of ancient mortar from the Great Wall and other Ming Dynasty buildings. Their findings revealed that the mortar wasn't just ordinary lime mortar made from calcined limestone. It contained a significant amount of glutinous rice, specifically a starch called amylopectin, which comes from sticky rice. The research showed that this sticky rice amylopectin acted as a powerful organic additive, creating a unique organic-inorganic composite mortar. When mixed with slicked lime calcium hydroxide, the amylopectin formed a complex that dramatically improved the mortar's strength, water resistance, and overall durability. It made the mortar incredibly cohesive and resistant to cracking, even under stress or environmental exposure. In essence, the sticky rice gave the mortar a superior binding capacity, allowing it to withstand the test of centuries of wind, rain, and seismic activity. It was, in many ways, an early form of biocement. The process wasn't just about throwing rice into the mix. It's believed that the rice was cooked into a kind of porridge or gruel, then mixed with the lime. This allowed the starch to fully dissolve and integrate into the mortar matrix. The resulting mixture had excellent workability, allowing masons to lay bricks efficiently, and then it's set to an incredibly hard finish. This ingenious technique highlights the advanced material science knowledge of ancient Chinese engineers who, without modern chemistry, understood the practical benefits of organic additives. They were essentially using trial and error over centuries to refine their building materials, discovering what worked best through observation and practical application. This sticky rice mortar was not just used for the Great Wall, it was employed in other important Ming Dynasty structures like tombs and city walls, proving its widespread adoption and effectiveness. The secret wasn't necessarily hidden, it was a well-known construction practice of the time. However, to a modern mind, the idea of using food as a structural component is surprising and often overlooked, making it a hidden secret for contemporary understanding. It speaks volumes about the resourcefulness and sophisticated engineering capabilities of ancient China, turning a common staple food into a key ingredient for monumental, enduring architecture. Could variations in the type of rice or preparation methods of the sticky rice mortar explain subtle differences in the durability of different wall sections? Were there specific regional variations in the organic additives used in mortar beyond sticky rice that are still undiscovered? How did the knowledge of creating and applying this complex organic-inorganic mortar spread across the vast Ming Empire? And were there specific master builders responsible for its dissemination? Number 3, was the wall a single structure or many? This is perhaps the most fundamental secret about the Great Wall, and one that utterly reshapes our understanding of it. The Great Wall is not, and never was, a single continuous structure built by one emperor or even one dynasty. It's a vast, fragmented, and layered network of walls, fortresses, trenches, and natural barriers built over more than 2,000 years by numerous different states and dynasties, often in different locations with different designs and materials. The idea of a single, monolithic Great Wall is a modern simplification. When people visit the wall, they usually go to the Ming Dynasty sections near Beijing, like Badaling or Mushinyu. These are indeed impressive, continuous stretches of stone and brick, but they represent only a small fraction of the total Great Wall system. The earliest walls date back to the Warring States period, around the 7th century BC. States like Qi, Yan, Zhao, and Qin each built their own long walls to protect against rivals and northern nomads. These were distinct, separate fortifications, sometimes running parallel to each other. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, famously ordered the connection of some of these existing northern walls and extended them to form a unified defensive line against the Xiongnu. This was a massive undertaking, but his wall was largely made of rammed earth and timber, and much of it decayed over time. After the Qin dynasty, other dynasties, notably the Han, Northern Qi, and Sui, also built extensive long walls, often repairing or expanding upon earlier efforts, but just as often building new, separate lines of defense far from previous ones. The Han Dynasty, for example, built westward into the Hexi Corridor, creating new fortifications to protect the Silk Road. It was the Ming Dynasty 1368 to 1644 AD that constructed the most famous and well-preserved sections we see today. They embarked on an ambitious program of building and rebuilding, using more durable brick and stone, and integrating watchtowers, garrisons, and beacon systems into a comprehensive defense network. But even the Ming Wall wasn't a single, continuous line. It had parallel sections, multiple layers of defense, and sections where natural barriers like mountains and rivers were simply considered part of the wall. The State Administration of Cultural Heritage of China conducted extensive surveys, first in 2007 and then more comprehensively in 2012. These surveys officially determined the total length of all known Great Wall sections, from all dynasties, to be 21,196.1, 8 kilometers, 13,170.7 miles. This figure clearly demonstrates that it's a collection of walls, not a single structure. This includes trenches, natural barriers, and discontinuous segments spanning across 15 provinces and regions. Dr. William Lindsay, a British conservationist who has spent decades exploring and documenting the wall, often emphasizes this point, advocating for the preservation of all segments, not just the famous Ming sections. Understanding the Great Wall as a multi-layered, fragmented historical system rather than a singular construction changes everything. It's not one static monument, but a living testament to thousands of years of shifting borders, evolving military strategies, and the continuous effort of countless dynasties to protect their realms. It's an archaeological tapestry woven over millennia, each thread representing a different era and a different purpose. Are there still undiscovered sections of ancient walls, perhaps completely buried or overgrown, that could further expand our understanding of its true fragmented nature? How did the military strategies employed by different dynasties vary due to the inherent fragmentation of the wall? What lost knowledge about specific construction techniques for different sections and materials might still exist in forgotten historical archives or local folklore? Number 2, what was the true length of the Great Wall? You hear numbers tossed around: 4,000 miles, 5,500 miles, 13,000 miles. So, what's the real number? The truth about the Great Wall's length is one of its most surprising secrets, because it keeps changing, and the answer depends entirely on what you're counting. It's not a straightforward measurement, and it certainly isn't the single, fixed number many people assume. For a long time, the most commonly cited figure, especially in the West, was around 6,000 to 6,400 kilometers, about 4,000 miles. This often referred primarily to the Ming Dynasty sections, which are the most visible and well-preserved. However, this number was always an underestimate because it ignored the vast stretches of older walls and less prominent sections. The complexity lies in defining Great Wall. Are we talking only about brick and stone walls? Only about continuous sections? What about earthen ramparts? What about natural barriers like mountains and rivers that were integrated into the defensive system? And what about walls that were built, collapsed, and then rebuilt in a slightly different location by a later dynasty? The modern understanding of the Great Wall is a tapestry of all these elements. Recognizing this complexity, the Chinese government embarked on a monumental archaeological survey to determine the true extent of the wall. This was a massive undertaking using modern surveying techniques, satellite imagery, and on-the-ground archaeological work. The first phase of this survey, focusing primarily on the Ming Dynasty sections, concluded in 2009. It found that the Ming Wall alone measured 1.8 kilometers, 5,500 miles. This was already significantly longer than previous estimates, but that wasn't the end of it. A more comprehensive survey, covering all known sections from various dynasties, was completed in 2012 by the State Administration of Cultural Heritage (SAC). This extensive research took years and involved experts from all over China. The official announcement shocked many. The total length of all historical Great Wall sections across various dynasties and regions was determined to be a staggering 21,196.18 kilometers, 13,170.7 miles. This number includes all types of fortifications, brick, stone, rammed earth, trenches, and even natural barriers that were integrated into the defensive system, spanning 15 provinces and autonomous regions. This immense figure fundamentally changed our perception of the wall. It's not just a single famous tourist attraction, it's a sprawling ancient superstructure, a complex network built over centuries. This research, published by SAC, highlighted the fragmented and multi-layered nature of the wall, confirming that it's a collection of many long walls rather than a single, continuous line. The historian William Lindsay, who has walked thousands of kilometers of the wall, often points out the importance of these official surveys in dispelling the old myths and revealing the wall's true incredible scale and diversity. So, the true length isn't one number but a collection of numbers, with the most comprehensive official measurement now standing at over 21,000 kilometers. This incredible figure is a testament to the continuous efforts of various Chinese dynasties to protect their northern frontiers, a monumental undertaking unparalleled in human history. It's a structure that reveals its secrets incrementally, and its true scale continues to surprise and awe. What percentage of the estimated 196.18 kilometers of Great Wall has been lost completely due to erosion or human activity? Are there still significant undiscovered sections of older dynasty walls that could increase the true length even further? How do different methodologies for measuring the wall, e.g., following the exact contour versus straight line distance, impact the reported lengths, and which is considered most accurate? Number one, was there a sticky rice mortar secret? Yes, absolutely. This isn't just a quirky historical tidbit, it's a genuine secret of ancient Chinese engineering, and it played a crucial role in the incredible durability of parts of the Great Wall. The sticky rice mortar is not a myth, but a scientifically proven component of some of the wall's most enduring sections, particularly those built during the Ming Dynasty. It's a testament to the ingenuity of ancient builders who harnessed the properties of everyday materials in unexpected ways. For a long time, people observed that the mortar used in many Ming Dynasty structures, including significant sections of the Great Wall, was exceptionally strong. It often outlasted the bricks or stones it bound together, making disassembly incredibly difficult even with modern tools. This strength contributed significantly to the wall's ability to withstand centuries of weathering, erosion, and even minor seismic activity. The specific nature of this robust mortar, however, remained a practical observation rather than a fully understood scientific phenomenon until relatively recently. The big breakthrough came with a research study published in 2010. A team of scientists from Zhejiang University in China, led by Professor Zhongbing Jian, meticulously analyzed samples of ancient mortar. They were looking for the secret to its remarkable strength. What they found was fascinating. The mortar wasn't just made of lime, a common building material derived from heated limestone. It also contained organic components, specifically amylopectin, a type of starch found in glutinous rice, more commonly known as sticky rice. Their research, published in the journal Accounts of Chemical Research, revealed that the sticky rice starch acted as a powerful natural binder when combined with the lime mortar. The amylopectin created a complex organic-inorganic composite that imparted superior mechanical strength, better water retention, and increased resistance to cracking compared to pure lime mortar. In simple terms, the sticky rice made the mortar incredibly cohesive and durable, much like how modern polymers are added to concrete to enhance its properties. The ancient builders had, through centuries of empirical knowledge and trial and error, discovered a sophisticated biocement. The process would likely have involved cooking sticky rice into a gruel or paste, then mixing it thoroughly with slaked lime and water. This concoction would have been used by masons to lay the bricks. As the mortar dried and cured, the chemical reactions between the lime and the rice starch created a robust, long-lasting bond. This wasn't a universal technique across all sections or dynasties of the Great Wall, as methods varied based on available resources and regional practices. However, it was a prominent and highly effective method used during the Ming Dynasty, especially for important structures and the most heavily fortified sections. This sticky rice mortar is a brilliant example of ancient science and engineering. It shows that ancient builders were not just brute force laborers, but keen observers and innovators capable of developing advanced material technologies. It's a powerful reminder that some of the greatest secrets of history are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for modern science to reveal their true genius. The next time you see a picture of the Great Wall, remember that beneath its weathered surface lies a history of culinary and construction collaboration. Were there other organic additives, beyond sticky rice that were experimentally incorporated into ancient Chinese mortars in different regions or for different purposes? Did the specific type or preparation method of sticky rice significantly impact the strength and longevity of the mortar? Could the knowledge of making this bio-cement have been considered a closely guarded secret by master builders, only passed down through specific lineages, and how much of that knowledge has been lost?